Emerging from the Scottish Inland Waterways Association in 1980, the Forth and Clyde Canal Society has played a major part in the revitalisation of the lowland canals, the Forth and Clyde Canal in particular. So 30 years on, who are we? What did we do? What do we do now? And where are we going? A shorter history illustrated by the thoughts and reminiscences of a few who were around when we began and are still active today.
Well, the Forth and Clyde Canal, when I first knew it in the 60s, early 60s, was pretty derelict. And indeed, a Forth and Clyde subject plan was put in place, which protected the canal and made sure that any new bridges that were built with a minimum headroom of 10 feet above the level of the canal. In 1968, under the 1968 Transport Act, the Inland Waterways Advisory Committee was set up, the IWAC, and they came up to Glasgow in 1968, just after they were set up. And they toured the west end of the Forth and Clyde and thought it was in a shocking condition. When the continued existence of the Union Canal was threatened by infilling at Falkirk, a Union Canal conference was held. At the end of it, there was a proposal to set up a Union Canal Society. And I spoke up and said I thought we didn't need a Union Canal Society, we needed a Canal Society for all the Scottish canals. So the Scottish Inland Waterways Association was set up. When it became clear that there was a group of enthusiasts wanting to set up a Forth and Clyde Canal Society, we as Sir Clyde University, who had been involved with canals, and to be honest, I myself had been involved in canals by that time for 20 years or so. And because I was a Scottish member of the Inland Waterways Amenity Advisory Council, it seemed sensible to hold a meeting at Sir Clyde University, staff club as I recall, and the chairman, the then chairman of IWAC, David Wayne, was there. And when this new baby appeared 30 years ago, we all thought this was marvellous, that at last there was somebody who would champion the Forth and Clyde. And it really has been a great thing for canals to have the Forth and Clyde Canal Society.
Well, it was great to get the Forth and Clyde Canal Society going, because before then we'd got various groups along the canal, and we'd got one locally here in the Kilsyth and Cummin area. And at that time in the 70s, there was nothing really here at Auchenstarry Basin where we're sitting just now. There was just a field, there wasn't even any kind of a basin here. So what we did as a local group, we took out all the rubbish of the area, we built a little slipway, we built a little landing stage, we got canoes and smokes into the water and held a whole series of little canal safaris along the canal, and that really got it going here. But what was good was in 1980, when the Forth and Clyde Canal Society got going, we all joined the new society, which gave us the strength of a big society looking after the whole of the canal.
Well, when we moved up from England in the mid-70s, the canal was just an absolute rubbish tip, and we got involved with some people who wanted to do some cleaning up, and it all started from there. Then in the 80s, when we decided to form the society, we wondered, where do we go from here? And the general consensus was, let's get people on the water. So in turn, we then looked around for a vessel that was suitable for that, and we purchased the Clyde Navigation Trust old ferries and had them brought on the canal, converted and used them as the first passenger boats in about 30 or 40 years.
I didn't become chairman until midway through the 1980s. The local plan was an interesting process of negotiation and putting forward our ideas and working them through the plan process. So to a great extent, the local plan incorporated a lot of the ideas that the Canal Society wanted to see happen. The committees that were set up for the local plan, one was for people working with the officials of the council, one was for elected representatives. And to begin with, Dick Davis was on the committee that was set up with the elected representatives, and I went onto the committee with the planners. It was probably quite a good split of our forces in that respect. And then later on, Dick stood down and Donald became the representative with the elected representatives. And who better to sweet talk all the politicians than our Donald?
I saw that there was to be a meeting with a view to perhaps forming a Forth and Clyde Canal Society, and I went to it and paid my first subscription, and therefore became one of the earliest members. And from then on I got newsletters. Didn't do a lot actively in the first year. There was a Siwa rally in 1987, and we must have messed about in boats then. And the Gypsy project started. Initially, there was a hope that we could extend interest in the canal eastwards, and I think it was one of Richard Davis's barges that was the first Gypsy, and I remember hiring it for kids' birthday parties. They must have, that must have been 87, 88, thereabouts. And then when the fundraising for this current Gypsy Princess started, I expect I was Paul Cartered into being part of it.
There was a couple of main projects, really. One of the projects was the big canal festivals that were held here. And again, this was before the basin really got anything like developed as it is now. But we had huge festivals here when we had up to 20 boats on the water taking people on trips. And this is all, of course, well before the canal was reopened. We had marquees, sideshows, fairground and all the rest of it. And it was really good fun. And we never got a single penny grant for these. We made money on them. And the money that we made was used to put towards our canal boats to get our own fleet operating. And that was one project. The other main project was the Gypsy Princess project. And this was to put an entirely new boat onto the canal here at Kilsyth. And we had a local committee of the Canal Society running here in this area to fundraise for it. And we launched it here in 1990 with a great deal of fanfare, with local councillors and all sorts of bigwigs here doing it, plus a party of school children from the local school, Holy Cross Primary at Croy there, as our main launch party on it. And then the Gypsy Princess ran here for more than a decade, and was really a flagship for the Canal Society at the time, before we got the canal reopened. And it's great to see Gypsy Princess now doing the whole canal, all the way from Bowling to Edinburgh, on various different ventures, and also still doing what she was originally designed to do, which was to take school children out on school parties.
When BW started thinking about taking the canal serious and redressing the balance, and the first part of that was the Glasgow Canal project. And also engineering studies were done under Derek Cochrane, who was the manager at the time, to show that all the obstructions on the Union and Forth and Clyde canals could be removed. And it was that really provided the base for recommending that the Millennium Link be built, because without the feasibility being demonstrated, there's no way that you could confidently have put forward a scheme to reopen the Lowland canals. And the great thing was that then Secretary of State for Scotland, Donald Dewar, and civil servants within the Scottish House took up this as a millennium project that would benefit the whole of Scotland and not just one place. And that was why that happened. But the pressure that was being generated by the Canal Societies, and particularly by the Forth and Clyde Canal Society, was that critical to getting the Millennium Link justified, because it had to be justified on the basis of community benefit. And the Forth and Clyde Canal Society, the Seagull Trust, the Union Canal Societies all came together and supported BW, making a really, really good case for reopening. And the really important thing from my perspective was the reopening of the Forth and Clyde canals are through navigation. The proposal is just to open it from Glasgow to the Union Canal at Falkirk. But that would have been losing the point, because the Forth and Clyde was built as a through navigation, and that's the really historic importance of it.
In the early 1990s, we were beginning to feel a little bit troubled, because everything had seemed to be going in one direction, which was up. And then it all kind of leveled off, and we seemed to be treading water a bit, which is why we set up the Temple Gates project in 1993 as a way of reinvigorating the society and the campaign generally. So when British Waterways came forward in October 1994 with the idea that they were going to go for a large lottery grant from the Millennium Commission, and of course we had to react positively. I took over as chairman in the April of following that, 95, And the line that I took at that time was that the Society was going to support this Millennium Link bid come what may.
First of all, British Waterways didn't get the money for the Millennium, as they didn't think the people wanted these canals opened up. So we went out and got petitions signed for the canal to be opened up, and within 6 weeks we got well over 32,000 signatures for the canal to be opened.
The local population here are so heavily behind getting the canal restored because...
If the link is to be successful, it's canal-side communities, along with British Waterways, who must lead the way. And it was only recently, when I listened in as Canal Societies collected signatures, that I realised this was already happening. Why?
This is not about nostalgia. This is about regeneration of an area like Kirkintilloch, and indeed Kirkintilloch is central Scotland in microcosm. Right across central Scotland, places like this will be reinvigorated by the Millennium Link, by the canal being brought back into life, the dereliction and the decay of decades since the canal was closed being brought back into use, and a bit of life and a bit of colour and a bit of activity coming into places like this, the rubbish being removed, the weed being removed, the whole environment being improved. The bid was knocked back the first time it was submitted, so we in the voluntary sector wanted to, in a sense, persuade British Waterways to keep going, and at the same time demonstrate that public support really did exist for this.
And on one occasion, when we were trying to get signatures in Clyde Bank, a man refused because his sister had drowned in the canal. He went home, thought about it, and came back and signed it, realising that a working canal is a safe canal.
With the money secure, British Waterways could proceed with the mammoth task of restoration. Townhead Bridge Kirkintilloch and Farm Bridge Bishop Briggs were formally opened when complete. The whole project was completed by May 2001, when the occasion was marked by a large flotilla of boats led by the infamous Millie the Fish, making the journey from Falkirk to Bowling. The Forth and Clyde Canal was open sea to sea, all 35 miles of it.
We've done it! We're here! We've made it to Bowling!
And then...
Meanwhile, work continued on the magnificent Falkirk Wheel, the spectacular 21st century solution to rejoining the Forth and Clyde Canal with the Union Canal and consequently Glasgow with Edinburgh. The wheel was completed in May 2002 and opened by the Queen. Now we have the unique wheel experience, tunnels and an additional 35 miles of quite different canal to explore. Our biggest Voyager is too big to operate on the Union Canal, but can and often does make the journey up the wheel.
The biggest challenge really was getting suitable boats. Started off with Ferry Queen. We've had many old barges which had been renamed many times. The Alec Ingalls is the one we borrowed from Linlithgow Canal Society. She is still sailing, being used as a workboat. The Cada Princess, which was a 14-foot boat with an outboard motor, fiberglass, we sold to one of the society members many years ago. Then in the 80s we had the Gypsy Princess built. We bought the Janet Telford from the Seagull Trust in the early 90s. We already had the Ferry Queen at Kirkintilloch, but she was out of action, so we needed a vessel there to replace her, and this seemed a sensible thing to do. At a later stage we acquired another barge from British Waterways, and this was called the Kirky Conveyor, which we used for regular clean-ups. It carried many tons of rubbish over the year. And then in 2005 we decided we need a bigger boat, and I think that was the greatest challenge, getting Voyager built, because that took a long time. It took the society members a great deal of fundraising and commitment, but as you can see, she's been a success. She's done what she was built to do.
Slowly moving.
As Voyager was being lifted into the water for the first time, Hillhead Bridge opened and a barge sailed through. The barge, which had been brought up from Liverpool, was taking part in an evaluation of the potential for freight operations on the canal. With her two sister ships in attendance, an unballasted Voyager made her way tentatively to Glasgow Road Bridge for final fitting out. Would she make it under the bridges?
This one we're sailing on at the moment is our latest acquisition. A 2/3 size Clyde puffer, built as a holiday home, and we hope, only just got it recently, that it's be very successful. We brought boats in from everywhere. Members would bring their boats along, other societies would come along. We started off in Auchenstary way back before the 80s, the late 70s. We had an annual rally there every year. You see now what's at Auchenstary because of the popularity of it. We have a big marina. We did Kirkintilloch festivals, where one year we'd hold them on this side of the culvert, another years we'd hold them on the Townhead side of the culvert, and this all built up until such times when the Millennium Link came along, a lot more boats could come through. And now the Kirkintilloch Canal Festival is an annual event which is taken over by the council, which means we turn up, do what we're asked to do, and everybody has a good time.
If you're now frankly faintly jealous and wishing you'd got organised and got yourself on a barge, then there's more to come. The music barge has sailed just now, but it'll be back into dock later. Welcome to the Kirkintilloch Canal Festival. Make sure you come back tomorrow, where there'll be plenty more boat trips up for grabs. But now I'd like to invite our contestants back on stage. Please give them a round of applause. Are you come, boys and girls?
The Kirkintilloch Canal Festival has been the main event on the Forth and Clyde Canal in recent years, closely followed by the Big Man Festival at Maryhill Locks in Glasgow. At both events, our main role has been to get large numbers of people from the general public on the water in a boat. On a couple of occasions we have attended the Glasgow River Festival. While we could not carry passengers on the river, we could publicise the canal and give our crews the opportunity to experience the boats in a large expanse of water. And of course we could never resist the temptation to get involved.
Come down and fight if you think you're hard enough. Prepare to die!
Wait, the film pops on.
I hope not.
One of the highlights for our cruise was joining the parade of boats and going upriver to the weir where the river ceases to be tidal. Note number 8, our old boat Ferry Queen beside the Glen Lee. We returned the following year, Janet Telford in new livery. On this second trip up the river, we took with us the just completed Voyager, and everyone enjoyed the experience, showing off just what she could do on an open stretch of water.
We have public trips every Saturday along this stretch, which are very popular, and one-way trips when we're having to move boats about for various occasions. Our next big challenge was after the Millennium Link. We thought our job's done, we can all go home, but that wasn't to be. We then turned ourselves into a kind of educational subgroup where we then started taking school kids out for wildlife, history, all kinds of charters, carrying somewhere in the region of between 1,500 and 2,000 school kids a year. There's lots more things we do, such as walking and talks during the winter and many other sorts of things, but the boats are the main tool for getting people interested.
Tommy mentioned walks. He has organised a couple of walking excursions on the Crinan Canal, the most recent being in 2008. Those who could walked the 9 miles from Adrisic to Crinan Basin. Others walked bits and used the bus to halt bits, but all getting there in the end. Some of us had been there before. We have walked to Grangemouth, where the Forth and Clyde Canal began, and explored the remnants of the Monkland Canal. And Guthrie Hutton still leads groups on exploration of the urban and industrial heritage within Glasgow, the reason for the canals in the first place. Most recent trip away from lowland Scotland was to Liverpool and Manchester via the Manchester Ship Canal, a canal built at the end of the 19th century and making inland Manchester an effective seaport for about 3/4 of a century. While in the area, we visited the restored Anderton Lift, a 19th century solution to the same problem the Falkirk wheel solved, getting boats uphill quickly and efficiently. When you operate a fleet of boats, they have to be maintained, repaired when they break down, modified to meet changing requirements, and have major parts replaced when they wear out, for example the engine of Gypsy Princess, and as they are steel boats, painted on a regular basis. Tommy Lawton has been at the heart of this part of our operation from the beginning. Being able to do most of the work ourselves has made it possible to operate at a level which would be impossible otherwise. A great many people have contributed to this activity, far too many to list all of them. Currently, in addition to Tommy, Walter Martin and Alistair Woods are at the forefront, with David Connell, Robert Welsh, Stuart Proctor and Jim McLaughlin being regularly involved, and Ricky Irvin and Jim Pert, and indeed many others, making contributions when they can. We manage the slipway at Glasgow Road Bridge, used to get boats out the water, and it is available to others through us. Things are quieter in winter, but Christmas offers an opportunity to engage with the youngest of potential canal users, and for many years we have run Santa trips in the run-up to the 25th. We started at Auchenstary, moved to Clydebank for a while, and currently can be found in Kirkintilloch. Our other great winter tradition is the January 2nd icebreaker.
The boats are the main tool for getting people interested. There have been many organisations on this canal network who've only lasted a few years because they rely too much on public money. We have managed to stay afloat.
I'm sitting in the office of the Forth and Clyde Canal Society, and I've been treasurer since the society began 30 years ago. Sometimes it's hard trying to get money together. We've been very fortunate. We had members donate money, some rather large sums of money, and some grants. But most of our funding comes from members' subscriptions, donations, and the income from the boats. We have no paid members in our society.
I think Canal News is a wonderful institution. It means of all the several hundred members of the Canal Society that are out there, everybody gets a Canal News 4 times a year which tells them what's going on and really keeps them in touch with not just the society but with the canal, because the articles in Canal News always reflect more than just a society. And I think it's a great wee magazine, and I think it's greatly to the credit of the society that after 30 years it's still running and still running well. Certainly I did my wee spell towards the beginning as editor, and since then I've enjoyed writing articles on wildlife, on the canal itself, on the building of the canals, and my present series of course is Paul's Paths.
Canal News is as important as ever, but our modern world has increasingly moved towards electronic methods of communication, email and websites. The Society is no exception. We have a website first managed by Myra Woods, then Tommy Lawton, and now our webmaster is Robert Welsh. This is where you get up-to-date information on what's going on. Our other publishing success has been the Forth and Clyde Canal Guidebook, now in its 3rd edition. Written by Society members, edited by Paul Carter and published by Easton Bartonshire. So where do we go from here? Have we a future?
One of the things that I joined in on before I became really active was walks that Alan Muir organised in conjunction with the New Glasgow Society. Also, location-wise, we had this Kilsyth branch. It had a very distinct purpose. We had people active at the Yoker and further out into Clyde Bank ends, and quite difficult to run a society on a very long linear basis, but that's another way that we might be able to improve our profile.
My own personal view of the future is that we want to be looking as to how we can integrate the canal into the whole surrounding countryside that it passes through, because when you come along in a canal you're never more than a mile or so from the Antonine Wall, which is now a World Heritage Site. I think the Canal Society could equally well spawn off other local committees along the canal system, where you've got local teams linked with their community councils and community forums, integrating the canal.
The main reason we called ourselves the Forth and Clyde Canal Society was that we would embrace from one sea to the other, from the River Clyde to the Forth, and this would probably be the intentions. The Voyager, for example, has been built with a high bow so she can go coastal. She's actually been up the River Clyde. Should the Loch Lomond cut become available, then boats should be able to get into Loch Lomond once again, and we have the same thing on the Forth. And this can only promote more tourism within the Central Belt, because there aren't many more jobs about now, so the tourist industry, I think, is where one has to set one's staff.
One thing I would like to see most actually is the raising of the summit level of the Forth and Clyde, because I think that would do a great deal to improve the appearance of the canal.
We just simply have to be constantly vigilant and make sure that the canal remains the fabulous asset and amenity that we always said it was.